If Joe Biden's mental capacity was a strip club, what are the girls wearing? Are they almost fully dressed?
A jogging suit.
I mean, are they full? I mean, are they showing any skin at all, or are they just?
Yeah.
I think they're walking out there fully dressed. Hello, everyone. Hola, mis amigos. You're listening to Oh My God, Hi, Hijo de Dios. Hola. With me, George Lopez. Porque, ¿sabes qué? Let's do the show. Porque I got a lot of things to do. I gotta go to that dry cleaner ahí. My kid fell. Se pegó la cabeza. I gotta go get some Neosporin Paul.
You know what George is?
Oh, I'm sure he's around here somewhere.
What's his name?
George Lopez. George Lopez.
Oh my God!
OMG.
OMG! Hi!
Oh my God! Hi!
Listening to all of your podcasts, and they're good.
Thank you.
I love it.
We throw caution to the wind here. We don't. No.
Oye, I can barely hear George. Can you crank up the freaking sound, Luis? Luis, me escucha. Súbeme la mierda esa. No puedo escuchar casi nada. Okay, ahora, ¿sí? George, dame un 10 count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yes.
I'm here with Gil Carrillo.
Hola.
Gil.
Yes, sir.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well.
Gil was one of the detectives that was in capturing the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez.
Coño.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. That was my case. Matter of fact, I was just back in Miami 2 weeks ago talking to the cops over there, giving them a lecture on the case.
My brother's a cop. That's cool.
God bless him. Good for him. Good people back there.
Yeah. Coño, man, next time you come into Miami, I'll give you my number. Give me a call. We've got a really cool little ranch here. We got horses and shit like that. It's really fun.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
So.
Thank you for the invitation.
And,
where has television gone news-wise?
Coño, mi amigo, let me say something. It's a rough. Did we start? Are we going?
I think we started.
Yeah. We're
Did we introduce him?
Oh.
Introduce Rick.
Okay,
great.
Rick's was one of my favorites. I used to watch him on CNN, and I think,
Yeah, joining us
every
today
day
on the podcast, we've got journalist, radio host, author, and host of the Rick Sanchez News podcast, Rick Sanchez.
Thanks, guys.
It's
an honor.
There's. Have you ever seen I mean, I'm sure in some other third world countries, seen a country so divided when it comes to news?
No, it's dangerous what's going on right now. We're living in two completely different silos. And the people over here don't know what the people over here are watching, and the people over here don't know what the people over here are watching, and it's absolutely crazy. And it's dangerous as hell. And, my friend Saul Trujillo, he's my partner in this thing, and he always says, I feel like there's people are talking about a civil war and shit. That's crazy.
If you look at some of the things that are being sent amongst followers of a certain particular kind, that they're all buying ammunition and they are looking at civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
As if it were as if it were nothing. I mean, the fact that they took over the Capitol and people were killed and all of that, and it's just they're patriots, They're patriots.
Well, and they're unified by their hate of Mexicans. So that's basically what got it all started.
I should have been over there then.
This dude named Trump came down an escalator and he said, they're criminals and they're rapists, and I suppose some are good people. And you know who he was talking about? He was talking about us.
Wow,
he was talking about all friggin' Latinos now and in the past and who've ever come to the United States. That is... I mean, it's like you're throwing out a net and saying, everybody who agrees with me that you hate Mexicans, come on board, and you know what, we're going to do this thing. And what still pisses me off, guys, I'm sorry, I know you say I'm doing this podcast.
Nobody give a fuck about that. You're right in. You're right in with us.
Yeah, but when not only that he did this and that the right did this and that Fox News and all these other guys and all these bizarre networks that are propping up literally spend 80% of their energy talking about the border, which means we hate Mexicans. I mean, by the way, that could come off the wrong way. I, as a Latino living in the United States, believe that we should control our border.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's on the record. Nobody's out there saying, everybody come in, they can do whatever the hell they want.
No.
Pero coño, just because you're saying that you should control the border, I also want the people who are helping this country the most. Man, look, let's do stats. Latinos in the United States are the third fastest growing GDP in the world if they were a country unto themselves.
Yes.
Only behind China and India and ahead of the United States itself. Latinos in the United States start more small businesses. Latinos in the United States hire more people than anybody in the United States. I mean, the numbers make you go, why the hell would I want to get rid of these people?
Right.
Give me a frickin' break. They are the economy, the backbone of our country. And yeah, that doesn't get heard because the guys on the right are saying we're all a bunch of, whatever. And the guys on the left don't pay us any mind and don't know how to protect us with the kind of statistics that I just spewed out.
And why would somebody shoot that shot first? Why would somebody aim there first?
Coño, George, because it's easy, I guess, because there's a differentiation. The vast majority of people who are undocumented who come to the United States get off of a plane and overstay their visas. It has nothing the hell to do with the border. And most of the people who come to the United States and cross the border end up contributing more to the United States than any other citizens or non-citizens in the United States, commit less crimes, give more money. What was the number now? I think it's $80 billion that undocumented immigrants give to Americans so that they can retire for free. They subsidize Americans' ability to collect Social Security. I mean, these stats are important, pero nadie lo sabe. No. Nobody tells these stories, and that's why we're doing this Agua Media Rick Sanchez news thing. Because, they fired me everywhere, so I might as well just start my own damn company.
Yeah, I think that's true. They have fired you everywhere. Where was the last place that... But I think that at CNN, I think you got replaced for something that was menial. It wasn't even a big. Yeah. It wasn't even a big deal.
Yeah. I guess I mangled my words. I shouldn't have said what I said. All I was trying to say is the media in general needs to have more representation. It needs to be more diverse. We need to have Latinos in the media. And every time there's an opportunity, they skip us and go to somebody else. And then the conversation turned into something where I said something I wish I hadn't said. And that's fine. Listen, man, we live in a country where everybody has a right to get sued. Everybody has a right to get fired. Todas esas cosas. I get that. But here's the deal. So they fired me 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. They still haven't replaced me. There's not a prominent Latino on the news. We're 20% of the population. We're less than 2% of the people who are represented in the national conversation in the news or in the media, etc. Y coño, there's not a Rick Sanchez at CNN still. There's not one at MSNBC. There's not one at Fox. I mean, give me a break, guys. That? I mean, don't you think we should be there? Not to mention the fact that you know what Hollywood does, right? According to the Annenberg study, 37% of the Latinos in Hollywood are criminals, and another 27% are like losers. Again, I mean, it's a pattern that we need to just address. Not because we're angry ni nada de eso.
No,
well, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, no, of course.
Because we should say it.
But why aren't they out there? I mean, what is there's no. I guess if there's not. If there's not someone on there, I don't think if you don't get any pushback, then it's going to be all right.
Because they think that we're all sitting around watching Telemundo and Univision, and we're all grandparents watching telenovelas. And they don't know that the common age of a Latino in the United States is 11, and the common age of a non-Latino in the United States is 58, which is an unbelievable number. Wow. They don't know that 80% of us are U.S. citizens. They don't know that 95% of Latinos in the United States speak English under the age of 41. They don't know these things. So they think we're all just a bunch of beaners,
Right.
And because they think that way, and because to a certain extent we allow them to think that way, because we're not the kind of people who go out and protest and stuff. It's not who we are. My dad, your dad, they lose their job, they just go get another one and the hell with it.
That's right.
Yes. No importa, right?
And they weren't looking
that's who we are.
And they weren't looking for attention. Yeah, they weren't looking for attention.
Ahead, I'm sorry.
No, they're not looking for attention. They're not looking for. They're looking for a place to go every day.
Yeah, exactly. And I feed my wife and my kids and get the hell out of here, y sea lo que sea. But every once in a while, you got to look at this stuff and you say, man, I mean, we've been here since before the Pilgrims. First of all, Latinos, if you look at it from, Hispaniola and that shit, we got here in 1565. The Pilgrims were in 1620. We celebrated Thanksgiving in San Agustin, and they celebrated it in Plymouth Rock. But nobody knows this. Same as if you go to the, la historia de who we are in in New Mexico. I mean, these are important things that people just need to understand, that we're just as American as any other Americans out there.
Why is
sometimes we don't feel it, man?
Why is there a need? Why is there a need for someone to feel better and more important, or think that they're better than someone else?
Because if we are going to be the fabric of the United States, if for nothing else, we need to be also, as we grow in the United States, we need to be in boards. We need to be in the boardroom. We need to be the CEOs. We need to be in all of those positions where we probably already kind of deserve to be, as much as anybody else. As Latinos, we shouldn't be asking for anything more than anybody else has, but it should be proportional. I mean, going back to what I said a little while ago, George, if we're 20% of the population, why are we less than 2% of the people that we see on TV? Why is it that when they talk about inflation, they don't invite one of us? Why, when they talk about Ukraine, they don't invite one of us? We have a better perspective on the world than most people do because, I think we're a little more diverse. We bring experiences from our past, our parents.
Yes.
So, I'm a big proponent for that, more inclusion for us.
Well, Gil is a veteran. He served, you were in the Army?
I was in the Army.
He was in the Army and went to, he served in Vietnam.
That's another great statistic. Gil will tell you, Latinos serve in the military more than disproportionately to their actual population. We serve more. Marine Corps, for example, more Latinos than any other cohort in the United States. A Marine commandant was quoted as saying last year, "I need to stop Latinos from joining because there's too freaking many of them." Yeah. I mean, and they want to throw us out, guys.
But also, we think it's good to go to the front. That's where we fucked up. We're like, I'm going to the front.
We want to get up there.
Hey, you guys are going to the front. We are.
Yeah, let's go.
Let us up there. Hey, we're going to the front. But also when you were in Vietnam and you were gunning and flying and shooting, I don't think you saw color.
No, there weren't.
Nah.
There wasn't.
And you saw a guy. Tell Rick about the story of your Army buddy that you saw after all those years.
We.
You're gonna start crying.
This past. No, I won't cry.
Yeah,
I cried then. Past February. Captain that I flew with in Vietnam when I went to gunships, and I'm flying with him. He's the first guy that ever chewed my ass. Nobody's ever chewed my ass like him again. We're just going hot. My gun got jammed. We made a loop. We come back. I hadn't unjammed my gun yet. Made a third loop, and now I'm ready to go. When we landed, he came and jumped right in my ass and told me that, hey, when you panic, you die. I'm part of a 4-man crew, and we need you. We need you to be prepared. We need to do this. And I just looked at him. And then he turned and walked away. I never said anything back to him because everything he said was right. It was absolutely right. I always wanted to find that captain, that guy. We found each other on Facebook.
I told you he was going to cry.
And January of this year, I was going back to lecture in Arizona. He was planning a vacation. We decided we're going to meet. NBC, a kid that grew up with my kid, went to school together. He is now NBC's affiliate in Phoenix. He was the guy in charge of the news media back there. And he follows me on Facebook, and he wanted to know, hey, could we put a camera crew on you guys when you get together? He did. We met Tom Stemke, good Polish guy from Sheboygan, Michigan, and myself. And we met. And we cried like babies. We just cried, hugged, and cried. It was something beautiful. And I hadn't seen him in 53 years. And so we were able to do that, to get together.
What was that like, Gil? I mean, my God.
53 years.
I can't even imagine what it's like to be in a war. I've covered some, but it's different.
And to hear you say, I laughed
were you,
earlier.
like, panicked every day, man?
Right.
No, I flew every day unless the bird was down. And, it's business. You get into it. It's just like football. It's game day. You get in, you go out. And sometimes it gets ugly, it gets hairy. And you just praying, dear God, just get me out of this one. And you get, and as soon as you're flying away safely back to the base, it's all good again. You get down, rearm your plane, refuel, go into the hooch, and turn on combat on Armed Forces TV and drink a beer.
One of the most dangerous jobs, like in the history of military worldwide, was being a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, man.
Yeah,
according to the statistics. Those guys, they're dropped every day, right?
The captain told the news media guy, he says, we really didn't know if we were going to come home that anytime we went out, because it was an extremely dangerous thing, and it's just great to see the guy alive, and he's a good man today, and it was
yeah.
You're not going to make me
cry. But also,
you're Latino?
Yeah, and
Latino?
He's a Chicano.
I'm a Latino, but I have to laugh because you said something early on in the show. You mentioned beaners. And when I was in Vietnam, everybody had a nickname. And my first name is Gil, so my name was G. Beaner because I was Mexican. And I was the only Mexican in the platoon, and I was called G. Beaner.
But we do eat beans. I mean, is it an insult? I mean, I like beans.
No, it wasn't an insult. I didn't think it was at all.
Beaner's kind of cool, I think, right? I mean, it's not.
It's cruel.
It worked for me.
Now I'm fascinated by you, Gail. Do you ever hear people say something to you that makes you want to retort with, Coño, I mean, I fought for this country, dude. I fought for this country.
Yeah, when do you go there?
Because they're saying something.
The only time I wanted to say that was when I first went to the VA. I was diagnosed as a diabetic, and they sent me to a doctor. The doctor, unfortunately for myself or for him, I don't know, I got there, and he was a doctor that was from Vietnam. And so he says, okay, you're a diabetic. I said, okay. And I asked him a simple question, because I had a sister that was diabetic. I said, does that mean you're going to give me one of those things to prick my finger and I test my blood now? And the guy went off on me, telling me I'm not the doctor, and he really got angry. And I just looked and I said, hey, Doc, wait a minute. I know you got a tough job, and you see people that are a lot sicker than I am. I said, but I have a job that I got to talk to people too, and there's no reason to be condescending to anybody. I asked you a simple question, and because I challenged, now his voice went 5 octaves up higher, and I said, okay, time out. It's over with. Get out of my way. I'm leaving. And he pushed himself in front of the door. And he said, you're not leaving until I get done with that. And I said, I'm going to tell you last time, get out of my way or you're going to get hurt. I promise. Get out of my way or you're going to get hurt. So he stepped out of the way, let me out, and I never went back. And so that's the only time I wanted to say, you piece of shit. I fought. I got you here. And now you're going to talk to me like this? That's the only time I've ever been mad. I don't get mad at anybody that says,
good for you.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that to them.
Amongst all the other things that are wrong with this country, why aren't we taking better care of the veterans and people who put their lives on the line for all of us, indiscriminate of color or race, creed, age, that those guys continue to put their lives on the line and they get back and they can't get the treatment that they need?
Yeah, because I don't know, man. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the emphasis from a military standpoint today in the United States of America has more to do with how we can make Pratt and Whitney happy and how we can make Raytheon happy rather than how we can make the soldiers, the troops who are actually on the ground fighting happy. And the corporatization of the military, as Eisenhower warned us, a great president, about the military-industrial complex, is true. The guys in those big corporations who are getting trillions of dollars and starting really stupid wars like the war in Iraq are controlling things that should be helping the troops, but instead they're helping those guys.
I will say this about the
wealthy
veteran
people.
I will say this about the Veterans Administration today.
George.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll say this about the Veterans Administration today because I recently got contacted by the Veterans Administration and by a very, very wonderful gentleman. And he said the Veterans Administration today is not what it was back when I had the run-in. They're doing things fine. I can tell you that I've received nothing but the best expedient assistance I can possibly get. Stuff that I didn't even know I was worth had coming to me. I don't know if it had coming to me, but it just, all of a sudden, things are going well, and it's within 2 months. 2 months from time I started to actually being rated, and it's amazing. He says it's the new way of doing things. Started about 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, but don't you think, though, part of the problem is, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking out loud with you guys, as a bunch of Latinos hablando aquí, pero if we won more wars, or if we actually fought wars with the intention of winning them, instead of just being there long enough to make some people very wealthy from them, the soldiers would not come back from those entanglements as messed up as they are. Because I know if I was being given a job but I didn't understand what my function was, it would mess me up a little bit. And 20 years in Afghanistan without a real mission, same as Iraq, that's got to mess some of these guys up, right? I think.
I got to believe, I'll only speak from the time when I was in Vietnam. It's almost as if, as I look in hindsight, they brainwash you. This is your goal. This is what you got to do. You're fighting for your country. This is it. And they have to keep that morale up. Well, it got to the point, I was there. I got there the first week of the Tet Offensive, 1968, February 68.
Yeah.
And so it was terrible. By the time I left in March of 69, April of 69, coming home, you'd be flying and we'd get shot at. But before we could return fire, you had to call somebody else to get permission to make sure that it was not, that there weren't friendlies in the area, or this wasn't a friendly village. And one sits there. I know we'd sit there and say, so what are we supposed to do? Smile while they're shooting at us. So the war was being fought entirely. And even veterans then were bitter as to the way things were going on towards the end. When I got there, there was no bitter. It was good. Let's get out there. Let's throw chingazos, whatever you got to do.
I think what you said about, if people listen to this, I want them to understand that what you said about corporations being involved in the military, whether it's the tents, the food, the clothes, the protection, the ammo, it's all diverted to a company that is making money off of the soldiers and off of the war. Right, Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No question. Yeah. And they have undue influence in the Senate and in Congress, et cetera, because they're the ones who give the biggest amounts of money in donations to our politicians. And, as a nation, if we love this country, we need to watch that because it becomes unfair. And, the average person running for office in the United States gets 98% of their money from very wealthy corporations, and only 2% of the money from, folks like us. Man, they have undue influence.
And it's unfortunate.
To manifest wars even and get people to vote for things that they normally would go,
and it's unfortunate that the people that are fighting the wars and the people who are voting are ignorant to this.
I don't think people really understand what they're voting for or what's happening, right? You figure if it's being done, there has to be a reason why it's being done. And I don't think they
why people like Rick Sanchez get fired from places like NBC and CNN and Fox News.
What freedom has
that I'm saying now would let me? I would last 30 seconds on one of those places because the biggest advertisers and the people who sit on the board of NBC and all those big networks are guys who are also sitting on the board of Raytheon. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical. I love my country. I want this country to succeed. But you got to call things as they are. When I see my son do something wrong, I tell him, Mijo, I love you, but you screwed up.
Right.
And I don't think we do enough of this, guys, sometimes, in things like this.
And what are they trying to accomplish in news? Because it's almost like a team now. If you're Fox News, you're not CNN. If you're MSNBC, you're not Fox. You're not Breitbart. And you're not Young Turks. So it's almost like I would say a team. You're committed to your team, and whatever they say on your team is what you believe.
Yeah, it's an encampment, right? It's like we have to be over here saying this message, and we have to be over here saying this message, and it's unfortunate. And most of the people who are in those places are paid well enough to not want to leave the job, so they'll say whatever they think needs to be said. Listen, I got dear friends at all of those places, obviously, like you in the, in our businesses, you in the entertainment and comedic business and me in the news business. I got buddies that work at Fox News who don't believe some of the stuff that I know comes out of their mouth because I talk to them. And I got buddies at CNN and NBC who kind of are saying things that I'm going like, why would you say that? Why are you reporting that but not reporting other things? And it's because, well, some of these guys make pretty good buck, man. They give them, you could be an anchor at NBC. You could be like an Anderson Cooper dude, man, making $22 million a year just by reading a freaking teleprompter a couple times a day. That's a pretty good gig. Of course, you're not going to give that up. In the old days when I was growing up, a journalist was like, a high paid executive, maybe a couple $100,000 a year. So, this probably has got something to do with it, George.
So when Walter Cronkite was like everybody's, everybody watched Walter Cronkite, and all of those guys back there. Rick, what? I don't think they had a horse in the race. They were just reporting what the news was. They didn't have an angle. They didn't add a slant to the news. It was the news, right?
Here's what I think happened, and this is just my theory. I think what happened was after Watergate, there was an emphasis on confrontational journalism. They were going after anybody who was corrupt or anybody who was doing something wrong. And I think a lot of journalists back then maybe went a little too far. And there were business people who were probably attacked or had these confrontational interviews. And they all kind of got together and said, you know what? The media is a little bit out of control. Let's start our own media sort of thing. And those very conservative forces inside the United States, they started coming up with think tanks and their own media companies, vis-a-vis Fox News. Let's present a conservative perspective and convince Americans that they need to be on our side. Well, they really started off, George, as just a bunch of rich guys who wanted to make sure their taxes were kept down. So, they were going to push that message. But then they started pushing a message to get regular Americans, real Americans, over on their side, which was, let's talk bad about blacks. Let's distance you from Latinos or Mexicans or lo que sea. And little by little, they created this thing called Fox News and all these other entities that are on the right. And when they did that, they took all the angry white people with them, which left NBC and CNN with the non-angry white people. Right. So then they started programming to keep that audience, and they programmed to them as kind of angry minorities who are angry at the white people. So you got networks doing news for angry white people, Fox, and you got networks doing news for angry black people, MSNBC, and that's what we've ended up with. And you're absolutely right. It's siloed. Silos are not good. They're not good in a family. They're not good in a business, et cetera. And they're certainly not good for our country. But that's what we got right now. You're right. You're right.
And as we go, no, let me ask you this. So you and your podcast and what you do, like how can people find you, and how often are you doing your shows? And because I think it's very refreshing, isn't it? It's refreshing to hear someone speak, so freely.
It's a different perspective. That doesn't mean we're right all the time. We just give perspectives that I think are important. We like to call them Latino truths. That's what we do. We do Latino truths. Our company's called Agua Media. And, like you said, CNN fired me and I started a $4.4 billion company. And my wife said, get out of the house, go do something. So now we're going to do this, me and Saul Trujillo. We started Agua Media. This show that I do is called Rick Sanchez News. It's called Rick Sanchez News. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple and all that stuff. And we're getting a lot of traction. We really just started a while ago, but we're seeing a lot of people who are jumping on board and saying, Coño, finally somebody is saying some of the things that I've always wanted to say, or maybe some of the things that should have been said by some of these folks like the Anderson Coopers, but they don't defend us. So I will. We will. And I know you get it. I know you guys get it.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to be mean, but there's some things that, got to be said. That's it.
Because it almost like, when Fox News or when you said, after Watergate, that almost the gloves have come off on news. Now the gloves have come off on situations. Explain to us what taking classified documents back to Lagomar means politically.
Well, there's no question that those are stolen documents because I said this in my podcast yesterday. Somewhere in South Florida over the weekend, a young African-American man was followed by security to his car. When they got to his car, they found a pair of Nikes. When they asked him for a receipt for the Nikes, he wasn't able to present a receipt for the Nike, and they had information that he may have taken them from the store. They immediately handcuffed and took that young man to jail. He was about a 19 or 20-year-old young African-American who it appeared had stolen property, and they took him to jail. There's a billionaire who lives in Palm Beach, Florida, not too far from where that young African-American was taken. They found out that he had stolen government documents in his home. They didn't arrest him. They called him on the phone. They said, look, I'm sure there's an explanation. Just do us a favor, return them, and there will be no problems. And we need you to return them by a certain date. Instead, he returned half and kept half. And that billionaire did not know that there were cameras and a confidential informant inside that hotel, or that Lagomar hotel that he owns. So they knew that this was there. So they decided to go back in now, and they've taken those things back, and they found that it was stolen property, but yet that billionaire has not yet been arrested, and we're still waiting to see if he will. That's what bothers America. Whether it's Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or who knows who, there are two different systems of justice in America. There's one for that young African-American who seemed to have stolen a pair of Nikes, and one for a billionaire who lives in Palm Beach. And that's not right. And that's what makes people mad on both sides, whether you're cheering for Donald Trump or you're cheering for or against Hillary Clinton.
And a Trump supporter would say what about him having the documents or only returning half? Like, how in their mind do they reconcile that that's good for America?
It's the thing that you and I were talking about before that we Latinos can't stand, victimization. Oh, it's just because I'm Latino. Oh, it's just because I'm Trump. Oh, it's just because you don't like me. You know what? I mean, after a while, that thing gets a little bit thin. And that's basically the only argument that we're really hearing at this point, is that somehow the Justice Department and the FBI director, who, by the way, voted for Trump and was appointed by Trump, decided one day that he was going to investigate Trump, which makes no sense whatsoever. Right. And as far as Biden, who's, not the brightest bulb in the on the block.
No, but he's not the brightest bulb.
He's doing the best he can. He's just an old guy. But he had nothing to do with that. And that's the other argument that they're making, that somehow the president assigned the FBI and the Justice Department to go after that. It's not a good argument, but they tend to follow the lead from Trump and some of his
if Joe Biden's mental capacity was a strip club, what are the girls wearing? Are they almost fully dressed?
A jogging suit.
I mean, are they full? I mean, are they showing any skin at all, or are they just?
Yeah.
I think they're walking out there fully dressed.
How do we end up with this, though? How do we end up with a guy named Trump and a guy named Biden as the two candidates for the most powerful,
I do have one
greatest
question.
country on earth, man? I know a lot of really smart people, and they could all do a better job than both of those dudes.
They're not getting up. They're not getting up there, man.
What does it say about us?
They're not. I think it says it's been poor. How far back do we have to go until when the candidates were poorly planned out? Like, if you lose the election and you have a Republican, the Democrat side would be like, we got to start grooming somebody to get into the race. And I don't believe that's happening right now. I don't believe that we're prepared to go forward.
I worry about the fact that we don't have enough real juice from Americans in general when it comes to being involved in the system. I don't know if they want us to be this way, but my kids are like, Dad, it's all fixed. Come on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, if you get involved, Dad, come on. I mean, this is all predetermined.
What would work better, Rick?
So what we have is we've got basically the only people who vote in this country are like 65 to 80 or 90,
Yeah.
And that means that we're not hooked in, and we should be, darn it.
What works better? What do you think works better than having a president? Is there there's companies, Coca-Cola does well. They're around the world. They run a business. Is this structure that we've set up? Is it? Are we done with it? Should we adjust it? Should we have a president?
Well, I think one of the things is the Electoral College is a little bit of you guys are in California and you got just as many senators as Wyoming does. And they got 100, what do they have? 300,000 people who live there? I mean, that's like 1/100th of the population of California. And yet you get the same representation. They get the same representation that you get.
And the Electoral College was set up.
Who came up with this?
Yeah. And it was
crazy.
Set up. How many years ago? Yeah,
like 230 some at this point.
You're not talking to Rick Sanchez. Don't look at me. I'm just an everyday Mexican.
Yeah. But also people don't think
I'm a Mexican in a blue suit, man, you know? I don't know. Yeah, but I spent my life doing news and stuff and thinking about all of these things. So I do think sometimes that we need to address some of the things that people are afraid to talk about. And for some reason, why don't we have these conversations about some of these things in an open and honest way, not to make anybody feel bad or accuse anybody of anything. So in our country, we should fix our problems.
Are the company that you guys started, Agua Media?
Agua Media.
Agua Media. What are you guys? Are you guys into entertainment? Is it news? Is it interviews? Is it music, movies?
Yeah, mine is like news and commentary. And then we have another show hosted by Kathy Fernandez. And she does more of a spiritual healing, helping people kind of get through their day. Then we have another one, which is like a true crime horror show. And we've got another 5 to 6 shows coming up on the pipeline. And yes, obviously looking for the right comedian that hopefully you can suggest to us.
Yes. Why do you think that people are fascinated by true crime?
Because it makes us see the things that we don't experience in our own lives. And every single human being on earth loves hearing a story about somebody who's worse off than them. It's like, no matter how bad my life is, and my life sucks, right? I'm not saying my life sucks. I'm saying if I'm a human being thinking, my life sucks. I lost my job. I got this. My wife, my old lady doesn't like me, lo que sea, right? Whatever it is, I'm going to sit down tonight and I'm going to watch a situation where some guy got busted and he's going to jail or he's being investigated and he can't sleep. And you know what? That guy's worse than me. So I'm going to sleep really well tonight.
You know what? I've asked that question a lot, and I believe that answer is close to it, because I remember when we worked during when I worked during the day, and you would gravitate towards things where, and I still do on YouTube. It's just I think the thing that drives it now is true crime or.
I just think that people, something as simple as a crime, you don't need a great big deal of intelligence. They think they can jump in there and solve it. Everybody's looking to try and help solve the big mystery. They think they've got the answer. They can get involved without really being out there on the front line, because it is a big deal. And I know I'm being contacted constantly about doing more true crime stuff. So it's out there.
Rick, why would it?
Oh yeah, it's the biggest space in podcast, and one of the ones that has the best CPMs or whatever the heck all this stuff is, because for some reason it gets a big draw, and people do really like that.
Rick, what's making these kids at a young age, get weapons and go and destroy other people's lives and their own life? Like what are making these kids go in there? And I think they have to know that their life is over the minute that they step out of their house or step into a school or go wherever. I mean, at that age in high school, I don't know, man. I just think, we lead the world in school shootings and even mass shootings. What's happening in people's psyche?
Well, first of all, I do believe that we need to be able to come up with some kind of system. I don't want to take anybody's guns away, but we should have some kind of regulations as to who could buy them and when, and whether somebody who has psychological issues and they're documented should be able to be allowed to go to a gun show and buy a gun, or whether people under the age of 21 should just willy-nilly be able to go and buy guns. I mean, every great cop that when I was a cop reporter for many, many years, I was a cop beat reporter in South Florida. That's kind of how I made my name in this business. And I remember most of the police officers I talked to back then said, look, if it was up to us, we see too many people out here with guns that shouldn't have guns, and they're doing a lot of harm. So, yeah, there's no question guns are part of the issue. But when you say, George, when you narrow the question to the age of some of these people that are doing this, I don't know, man. I disagree with you a little bit. I think that I think it would be harder to grow up today than it was when you and I were just a bunch of cholos growing up.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that they get now, the messaging, the this thing and the laptop and the tech and the world moving so fast, it's just, I think it's befuddling. I think it's confusing. I think it makes them a little bit crazy. And, I used to climb trees and go to the park and get in fights with my buddies and play ball and, that stuff. And I don't see kids doing that anymore. I ride by parks and they're empty.
I do have an opinion on it.
Man.
I do have an opinion. And that was when I was a kid growing up, if you got in trouble with the cops, you got in trouble in school, parents were quick to beat the shit out of you. It was your fault. Don't blame it on the school. Don't blame it on the cops. And then we went from that to now everything is everybody else's fault. And they're not held to any kind of they're not held to any responsibilities at all. They get in trouble. Oh, it's mijo. The school, it was your fault. Why didn't you? What are you teaching them in school? Why are you allowing them to get that? You should be. They're in school. You should be taking care of. It's there is no.
My mom used to beat the crap out of me.
Go
ahead and say that. I mean, I know you might get letters on or something, but she did. And my dad was a very strict disciplinarian as well. So I remember my mom would sit at the front door, and we would be out, and they said we were supposed to be home at a certain time. My dad, by the way, was funny. He used to sleep in my bed, so if I came home late, I had to wake his ass up. I had the lights on.
Good one.
And I would turn on the light, and all of a sudden, and I'm jumping up, and your viejo's like, yeah, no way, ¿a qué hora llegas? See, I knew you were going to do this, And my mom would sit at the front door, and she'd say, entra, no te voy a pegar. She's got a chancleta in her hand, right? She's got a slipper or a belt in her hand. And she's saying, come on, no te voy a hacer nada. No te voy a hacer nada. I'm not going to do anything to you. Come on in. And then all of a sudden I'm going, okay, I'm going to come. Whack! As you're coming through the door. I mean, it was just the way we were raised. And
that's what, and that doesn't happen. They're not held for anything they've done. It's always somebody else, and that's the way they've been brought up. And I've listened to people say, you are what you eat, you are this, it's your environment, the area you've been brought up. I think it all starts in the home and ends in the home. It's the way you were brought up. There is no respect taught anymore, and you've got to monitor it. That's what's going on.
I think the phones and the electronics give you a false sense of that you're actually reaching out to people. Like, if you're walking, you see somebody taking a selfie, or they're talking on FaceTime, or they're doing something, and it gives people I think a sense that that every person is. I don't want to say important, but that it matters.
Now that you say that, when we were young growing up, you had gangs. And the reason gangs were formed were to protect one another. They became your family. You relied on each other, and you didn't care about anything else other than your gang member friends. Now, you get out there, they have social media, which is just an extension of the gang. I have all these people that are giving me advice. All
social media is an extension of gangs.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a word that we have in Spanish. It's called vergüenza. Vergüenza is a very powerful word, right, for us Latinos, right? It means shame.
Yep.
Sure.
And you don't shame your name. You don't shame your family. You don't shame your mother. You don't shame your father. And if you do, expect an ass kicking, right? You're going to get your butt whipped, because you just don't do that anymore. And that's so important in our culture. And I almost see, I see politicians nowadays who screw up or do something, like this guy, Matt Gaetz. We did a podcast on this guy, Matt Gaetz. He's being investigated by the feds for taking a 16 or 17-year-old girl across state lines and having sex with her, right? I'm not saying that. That's in the news. You can Google it, right? And if somebody were accusing me of something like that, man, I wouldn't show my face. I would not be holding news conferences. I would try and, if it's a lie, I would be screaming, hey, this is crap, this isn't true, and I would be dealing with it in court. The guy's holding news conferences every day and talking about, about Biden and this and then, an abortion issue. Man, shut up. Show some vergüenza.
Yeah.
What happened to that? What happened to that? I mean, I think as a Latino, that's one of the most important things that we get from our parents, from our culture. Don't shame the family. Don't do something so stupid out there that's going to make people think less of all of us. So
when you were growing
I think that's
up,
missing.
When you were growing up, what did you gravitate to? Did you play sports, or because I would imagine that somebody like you with an outspoken opinion, there's an intelligence to you that who were you upsetting in your early teens?
I was actually a pretty good kid. I mean, I grew up in a barrio here in Hialeah, Florida. I'm a Cuban kid. I came as an immigrant when I was 2. My parents never made more than $10,000 a year combined income. My dad worked in a hotel. My mom sewed shoes in a factory. That was one of my dad's jobs. So all I ever got from my parents was, love, but certainly nothing materialistic. And I kind of made my way because I played football. And I was pretty good at it. And I got a football scholarship, and I was able to go to Minnesota. And there I got a CBS News scholarship because I was a pretty good student. And then I found, the idea of writing and communicating as effectively as I could. And the fact that I was bilingual and I could do it in either language and switch back and forth in Spanish and in English, made people think that was pretty cool. So that helped me along the way as well. So yeah, I mean, I played football, and I was always a little bit of I always kind of fancied myself as a little bit of an overachiever, even though I grew up with nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. But there's a lot of us like that. I mean, I'm not trying to make my story special because if you go around the country, there's Latinos who've done 50 times what I've done. Guys like you, George.
Well, there's also whatever color you are that, this country should be for everyone to want to do better, and not, I wanted to do better, but I didn't want to begrudge someone else wanting to do better. I never even thought about them doing better. I only thought about myself. Never hated the fact that somebody other than me was doing better. And I think that's where we are now. We're a bit of like those, that it's just it's so negative and it's so detrimental to a free society that it's, you almost don't want to pop your head. I mean, how many creative people are we stopping from being creative because they don't want to poke their head out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because we have lost the capacity for being gracious as losers or as winners or as brothers and sisters for someone who had just done something well and deserves a pat on the back. Yeah. Just like when they do something not so well, they probably deserve to be told the truth. But it seems like you're right, man. Nowadays, we don't tell people the truth when we hear them say something we wish they hadn't said. We don't pat each other enough on the back. And we're always looking for things that are wrong instead of things that are right. And there is a negativity, almost a cynicism that has overcome us that I don't know. I don't know why that comes from. Just as Americans, and we feel a lot of that as Latinos in particular because, we get a lot of heat for stuff we don't deserve. So, but turn the other cheek. But Jesus said.
People in Miami and in Florida a lot of Latinos are on the right. Were they always red, or did someone turn them red?
No, they weren't always red. The Cubans who came to Miami after the Castro Revolution were Democrats. And they got sucked up in maybe I should put it this way, the Democratic Party's inability to cast aspersions among the communist governments that they came from. And the Republicans' ability, Ronald Reagan in particular, he's where it all started. Ronald Reagan came to Miami, embraced the Cuban community, and said, I am with you, and I am going to take down Fidel Castro. And, together we're going to forge an anti-communist world here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that was kind of just, political speak.
Yeah.
Which then everybody did since then. Today, to be elected in Florida, you have to come to Miami and you have to tell the Cubans that you hate Castro and you hate communism, and then they might vote for you. Unfortunately, because the Republicans were the first to do it, they've kind of drawn it out, and it's become part of the mantra, if you will.
Who was the mayor that had
meaningless because there's no difference between a Democrat and a Republican when it comes to communism, but for some reason they've bought into it.
Who was the mayor in Florida that had a little bit of juice? I think it was the Elian Gonzalez thing that he was kind of he was a name starting to come up.
Pinellas?
Yes.
Alex Pinellas?
Yes.
Was there during that time.
He was kind of on the up, right? He was kind of on the up, right?
Yeah. Well, I interviewed Bill Clinton during that. I interviewed Clinton. I interviewed Reagan. I interviewed Carter. I interviewed Obama. And one of my I'll never forget my interview with Bill Clinton because we just went toe to toe. I've never seen a human being who loves a fight more than that guy. And at the time, I was telling him that he was wrong in how he handled, Elian Gonzalez, because Elian Gonzalez was being used by the Castro government. And when his father said, I want him back, he didn't really want him back, because if he really wanted him back, why did he let him leave? Right. What, he changed his mind all of a sudden? And I was trying to tell President Clinton that. And I said, look, you got taken. You don't understand, Mr. President. And he started yelling at me and then telling me that I was wrong. And I started telling him that he was wrong. And I was supposed to interview the guy for just 10 minutes. And we were still going at it about a half hour into it. And they almost had to pull him back because he was so engaged in the conversation because he was convinced he was right. But I'll never forget. And it was all about Elian Gonzalez. And to this day, I admire Clinton for he loves to spar intellectually more than any other president I ever interviewed. And the other only one was Gorbachev. I once said to Mikhail Gorbachev, when you went to Cuba, Mr. President, and Fidel Castro pulled the red carpet and said, you can leave on your own. We're not going to even give you a state, escort. And I said, how did that make you feel? And Gorbachev turns to me and he says, that's your problem, you Cubans. You Cubans are obsessed with Castro. Everything is about Castro. The only reason that Castro is a famous person is because you make him that. Why are you asking me questions about Castro? And he got all pissed off at me. And then he just kind of walked away.
It wasn't always about Castro.
Those are the two times I interviewed presidents and they got pissed off for my question.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Amazing.
It is. It's fascinating to me. I just came. Awesome. Congratulations.
So the media group, you see it in original programming and podcasts and things like that?
Well, yeah. I think we're going to produce right now 3 episodes. Each one will be twice a week. Mine is 3 times a week. And I think the key for us is to try and tell the stories through a wider angle lens, because as Latinos, we bring different experiences than most non-Latinos in this country. We just see the world a little bit differently because of our own experiences. And we think that makes a difference in how we tell stories. One of the reasons George Lopez is considered one of the best comedians in the United States, it has a lot to do with the fact that you're Latino, because you bring this to the story that which you are, which comes from your soul. And just like George Lopez was able to succeed, and I in my own way maybe was able to succeed in news, we need to see more of that. And that's why we think by doing a true crime podcast hosted by a Latino, yes, written by a Latino, by doing political segments hosted and written by Latinos, and by doing all these types of different podcasts that exist out there hosted and written by Latinos, well, for one thing, it'll give 20% of the country a place to go if they want to hear Latino voices. And for another, all those people that we call Latino Plus who aren't Latinos will get to hear who we are and get to hear our stories.
I think
we're to hear that we speak English. We don't sit around watching telenovelas every night.
I still think that think that we're finding that audience amongst ourselves. You know, I still think that that us as podcast listeners and watchers, that we're still finding that and that in our cars and at work on the weekends or on walks, that you could find this entertainment much more enjoyable than listening to music or something that you become accustomed to. Like try something new.
Yeah, this whole podcast thing is really entertaining. I plan my days around my jogs with a podcast. I mean, I laugh my ass off listening to you guys on your podcast. And then I switch over and I listen to the New York Times podcast, The Daily. And then I listen to WAPO. So, I mean, I plan my day around my comedy podcast, my news podcast, my true crime podcasts. And, you know, I try and get in as many as I can. Obviously, once you start, you get busy with your day and stuff. But I think it's going to be the future. I mean, I think everybody wants to just go to get their entertainment out of this little box whenever they want. And I don't think it's going to be less. I think it's going to be more. Don't you?
If you look at television, you have to be in a stationary place to watch it. You have to be at home in front of your, in your bed but I don't think that we live like that anymore. And I think that you're right in saying that we'll find it on our phones and we'll find it on airplanes, and you find it more places than when we used to say, I can't wait to go home to watch, whether it was Mike Douglas for me or Dinah Shore or Merv Griffin or any of those things that you can just find now through YouTube and through podcasts now at your fingertips.
Well, for you, it was probably Engelbert Humperdinck, right?
I love that
guy. Run home to watch the Engelbert Humperdinck show.
I love them.
Big dinker.
I found myself more, as a Chicano in that time, into Seals and Crofts and the Doobie Brothers, and more than ranchera music, than I would say, of mariachi music or Mexican music. But we were into Ted Nugent, who was a friend of mine. He's hard right, but fucking what? That's what I say.
Yeah.
Like he and I talk, and I take the guys that I went to high school with to go see him, and he's great to them. And it's about the music and not his fucking politics. And Rick, nobody knew how anybody voted in the fucking 40 years ago. They didn't give a fuck. You didn't speak politics at the table. You didn't talk religion, and you didn't have everybody kept to their P's and Q's, as you would say. And now everybody has to know what used to go unknown. They want to know who you are.
I see these bumper stickers, and I'm thinking, who the fuck cares, man? Why are you putting all your shit out there like that? I mean, I get it. I belong to the PTA of my school or something like that. But everybody's bumper stickering their lives nowadays. Yeah. My kid got an A. I voted for Trump. I hate Trump. I like this guy. Why do you think that matters to everyone? Why would you put all that stuff out there about yourself?
Is there an insignificance that people feel if they feel like their opinion isn't being heard? It never used to be like that. And I think, like you said, I think this goes to saying that my opinion will be heard on Neighbor Next Door or whatever fucking social app that you're watching or listening to, that somebody giving away a cat.
My old lady gets that app, the Next Door app or something. Yeah, whatever the heck it's called. And I'm sitting here and I'm laughing at some of the stuff that those people are like complaining about. Oh my God! It's like,
listen, I'm sure guys used to masturbate all the time.
Like this. I'll tell you why I like this podcast thing that we're all doing. And that I think to a certain extent really is the future. It's more intimate. There's no script here. There's no teleprompter. I mean, we're sharing ideas based on our own experiences and hopefully learning something from each other. And I think that's so healthy compared to, listening to some dude on some network reading a teleprompter to you that was written by, I worked there, 70 elders or so.
But that when Rick was on
so
CNN,
much more real.
When I used to watch him on CNN, he would do that. He would use his hands, and he was very much into the screen. And you were like, I like that. When I was in my dressing room, when I was doing my talk show, I would watch you all the time. And I just found it very enjoyable that you were that way, and to see you now after so many years and to still see you that way, kudos, man. Respect to you.
Yeah, I remember you and I. Phil Kent called me one day and he goes, "George Lopez, we got George Lopez. He's going to do a talk show for us." And I said, "Really, Phil? That's so awesome." And then he was going to invite you to a basketball game. We were going to go watch the Atlanta Hawks play together, me, you, and Phil. And then we did, and then there was another one, and then he asked you. And then he asked you, knowing that you were going to be a part of my team made me feel so cool, man. I was honored.
And then
I'm a fan of yours.
I think he asked you, so do people know who he is? And you said, Phil, he has a fucking show named George Lopez.
He was the nerdiest son of a bitch I've ever known. But, hey, it is what it is. He was the boss there. He ran Turner.
I thought that my tenure there at TBS might have been skewed by some politics there, That when
Mine too, my friend.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was so pissed off when that did not come to fruition, or when it ended, or whatever it did. It was one of the first things that set me off, that started me on this train toward this company is not as diverse as they say they are, and they talk a big game, and one day this is going to get out, and it did, and I got fired. So I think you may have led to my firing, George. You owe me a couple of bucks on this one.
I probably do. But no one left the show we found out kind of in June that we weren't coming back. And I think the last shows were kind of in the beginning of August, and nobody left to find another job until the show was over. And when it was over, they gave us 36 hours to clear out the offices, which I thought was a bit funny.
Jesus.
I thought it was.
Yeah. That's how they told you?
Yep.
I mean.
Yeah. And I mean, you had Prince on the show. I had Prince.
Your show was fantastic.
Amazing.
I watched it. Most people watched it. I don't understand why they construed it the way they did. And what did they tell you?
I think that they got sold a bill of goods on Conan O'Brien that wasn't true. And once they moved me to midnight, where they didn't need Conan. But I also think that Jay Leno going to 10 o'clock, once he was relieved of his duties as the Tonight Show host, and having to go back on TV when he should have just taken his money and gone away, set everything in motion. If he had just gone away, I'm not sure if I would still be there now, but it wouldn't have ended the way it ended. I think these guys, the executives, that they got sold a story that wasn't true, and they all bought into the story.
Yeah. And I don't like Conan O'Brien to this day because of that, but that's because I'm a pissed off Latino.
You want to talk about
as
failing
you called
up?
me the other day when you did the promo.
There's a lot of there's a lot of failing up, and I would like the opportunity to fail up at least one time in my life, in my career. I want to fail up.
Well, they told me, they said, you're a big ratings getter, Sanchez. So every time we've got a hole in prime time, we're just going to stick you there so you can raise the ratings. And they did it when they got rid of Campbell Brown, and they did it when they got rid of Paula Zahn. They put me there, but then they replaced me with somebody else. And then finally, the last time was they had put me there, and we were doing really phenomenal ratings, the highest ratings in the network at the time. And then they said, you know what, we're gonna save you for the next time. We're gonna give that job now, that 8 o'clock primetime show. We're going to give it to Elliot Spitzer, the former somewhat disgraced ex-governor of New York. And that's when I went on my little tirade. I went on a radio show and I said, this isn't fair. And then they fired me the next day. So it was kind of like that. I mean, yours was Conan O'Brien. Mine was Elliot Spitzer.
Even Jack Cafferty. Even Jack Cafferty and the Cafferty file, that this guy would prepare these stories that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And just, was it 3 minutes at the end of an hour? I mean, pretty you guys were doing, that's a news person doing their work, on the day that Bernard Shaw, God rest his soul, passed away. Bernard Shaw and you guys were newsmen, news people.
Yeah, we were doing serious news and getting serious ratings, and one of the cool things I remember, John Klein calls me up to his office, the president of CNN, up at the Time Warner building where you did all your deals, And Klein calls me up one day and he goes, "I want you to know something. Your show is now the first show in the history of the network that's had the highest non-white ratings. You're getting Latinos, you're getting African Americans, you're getting everybody that we've always wanted to be able to reach." And part of it was the whole social media thing we were doing. But it was pretty cool to be told that by the president of the network that we're doing, these ratings. And then I go and talk to the other dude, the president of Turner or whatever. And he says to me, I said, John says that my ratings are good. And he says, yeah, but ratings don't matter here because we live by subscriptions, which is true. Yeah. The only thing they care about is how many people are subscribed that watch them. And he literally told me ratings don't matter. Amazing. I was like, what? I mean, what the hell? If my show's doing better ratings than the other one, that doesn't matter? No, it doesn't matter. Okay, then I guess it doesn't matter.
Well, I love seeing you, man. Thank you. It was wonderful to reconnect with you. I think, as always, I love your spirit. I love how you present yourself, and I will be a listener of your podcast and a follower of your media.
Well, what you should be is, can you come? I would love to return the favor and interview you as well.
Absolutely.
And, I would love to do that, man. I'm a big fan of you guys. I appreciate it.
I'm doing a show at NBC right now with my daughter Mayan, my one child, and
she's cute as a bug. I love it. I've been watching it. I think it's fantastic, and I love the chemistry between you guys. And the shit she says about you is funny.
It was a true honor to meet you and share this time with you. The people that you've been involved with in your career, God bless you.
Thanks, Gal. I appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.